Chapter 1, What Happened 10 Years Earlier. Hello, April? Yes, it's me, Beth. I was getting out of the shower when the phone rang. I wanted to beat the answering machine but didn't make it. What's the matter, April? You sounded so desperate on my answering machine. I just got home from shopping and thought I better call you. What's the matter? I did a stupid thing, and when I tell Dave, I know he's going to leave me. What happened, April? I went out for lunch with Brad today. God, I feel awful. He asked me out for lunch when I was dancing with him at the reunion last night, and for some strange reason I went. When I tell Dave, I know he'll want to end our relationship. I don't know what to do, she cried. God, April, don't tell Dave. He doesn't need to know that you made a big mistake. Didn't Brad go back to New York today? Yes, but I hate myself. Brad went home after our encounter. I love my boyfriend, I really do. It was just that, Brad was my first and I was thinking about old times and I really messed up and now I'm going to lose Dave. Look, April, you made a mistake, a big mistake. It's over and done. Brad lives in New York. He's in a committed relationship too, so he isn't about to brag about it either. Let it go. Be the best girlfriend you can be. Don't deny Dave anything and constantly show affection to him. You'll have to live with the fact that you were unfaithful. Don't lose him in your relationship over a big mistake. You're right, Beth. It wasn't all that good either. Dave is a much better partner than Brad. I think I'll take your advice. I'll just have to live with it. That was a telephone conversation I have on tape from 10 years ago. We had and still have one of these answering machines that rings 4 times and gives out a message. If you answer it while the other person is still on the line, it will record the conversation. That is what happened to April. She had gone out to the store, and when I came in and played the message, that was what I heard. I was totally dumbfounded. I had no idea what to do. My beautiful girlfriend and mother of my 3-year-old daughter had been unfaithful with her old boyfriend. I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I had to make a decision right then, so I took the tape and inserted a new one into the machine. I went through the laundry basket and found the pink clothes she had on that morning. I was going to keep it as evidence if I needed it. Let me tell you a little bit about our life. April and I, as well as Brad and Beth, went to the same high school. Brad and April were known as the couple by everyone until Brad was caught by April hugging Mary Lou. When she saw them, she screamed at Brad and told him she never wanted to see him again. Of course, he tried to win her back, and she always refused. That's pretty much when April and I started dating. I think at first she did it to get even with Brad, but she eventually fell in love with me. Of course, I liked her all during high school. I just never had much of a chance with Brad around. In the yearbook, Brad was labeled most likely to succeed. He was the popular athlete. April was labeled Miss Congeniality and prettiest girl in the class. I had a label too. MacGyver, Mr. Fix-It. They called me MacGyver because of a television program where Mac could repair or fix anything. I was kind of like that, but of course not as good old MacGyver. Some friends even called me Mac Dave. April and Brad were chosen as homecoming king and queen of our class, but she wouldn't spend much time with him. She was actually my date, and he took Mary Lou. Now here is the surprise after graduation. Mary Louisiana became a nun. I swear to God, she is now called Sister Mary Lou. After graduation, Brad left to go to a university in New York. He wanted to become a lawyer. After he finished college, he wanted to stay in New York and be an attorney in the Big Apple. April went to the community college and studied secretarial skills. I went to school to become a mechanic, specializing in auto repair. We all achieved our goals. After college, April and I fell in love. We did everything together. After we got married, she got pregnant. We were really happy. We had a baby girl we named Carly. Of course, she was our little bundle of joy. I opened up my own car repair shop. I literally had more work than I could handle in a reasonable amount of time and hired 2 employees. People, in those days, wanted their cars repaired quickly, and we were proud of our full-service shop. I even opened for a half day on weekends to complete work when necessary. Life was good, everything was great. My parents were really proud of me. April's parents thought I was nice and a good provider, but wished April would have waited to see if Brad returned. You can't win them all over, was my philosophy. I tried my best as a husband and father. Our 5th-year class reunion was coming up. I could care less about going, even though I wouldn't mind seeing how a few of the girls I dated were doing. I've seen a lot of them when they brought their vehicles to get repaired. We had an attractive class of women. Of course, April maintained her beauty and charm. She really wanted to go to the reunion, and so away we went. April looked great, but she always looked nice. I guess she dressed a little more stylish for the old classmates, including Brad. When I told her how nice she looked, she said she had her prettiest title to uphold. She also said she dressed for me. Of course I said, yeah, right. We got to the reunion, and of course Brad came running over to say hi to us. Really, he wanted to see April. He could care less about me. I did shake his hand and asked where his wife was. He said she couldn't make it and was busy running their office until he got back Sunday night. She was his secretary before they were married. She told him she was going to stay as secretary. I was talking with all the class members. I danced with a number of the girls from our class. Every time I danced with someone, I noticed that April danced with Brad. I was getting a little annoyed. I told her about it, and she started dancing with some of the other classmates. We ended the reunion dancing the last few dances together. Some of the class said they wanted to meet for lunch the next day before those who traveled had to head home. I told them I wouldn't be able to make it because I had a few cars to fix first thing in the morning. April said she would try to make it if she could convince her mom to watch the baby. I wanted to object, but that would make me look pretty bad, and April has never done anything for me to distrust her. I got up early and went to the shop while April was still asleep. I had to work a little later than usual. When I got home, it was around 5 p.m. There was a note on the table from April saying she was going over to pick up our daughter. I saw the answering machine flashing and listened to it. When April came home, she said her mom was going to keep Carly for the night so we could have some time for ourselves. She took me into the bedroom and expressed her love to me. I asked her what brought that on, and she said she wanted to show me how much she loved and cared for me. I guess this was the start of her trying to make up for something she didn't even know I knew. Life was better than usual, and it was always good. I truly felt she was trying to make up to me for something she didn't even know I knew. We had another little girl. We named her Danny after me. My name is David Daniel Moore. Throughout the years, Danny became my little sweetheart. Carly always hung with her mom in the kitchen or wherever she went. Danny always wanted to come to the garage with me. I took her as often as I could. I didn't want her around the fumes of the garage too much. I had a small apartment above the garage that was used for resting or even taking a nap. It had a kitchen and bath in it also. That way I could shower instead of going home smelly and looking like a grease monkey. I took Danny up there to play games whenever I could. She wanted to hang with her dad, and I wanted to hang with her too. We took the girls everywhere. They loved amusement parks. We would take them so they could go on rides all day. Of course, Danny wanted to ride the rides with me, while Carly rode with her mom. Gosh, I loved my family. I almost wish I would never have found out about the affair. Life would have been perfect. It was time for our 10-year reunion. I really didn't want to go. I was afraid what I might do to Brad if he showed up. For the last 5 years, my life was good. I didn't want it spoiled any further. I asked April if she wanted to attend, and she told me that she wasn't interested in going. I was so relieved. Just in case there were any friends calling to convince April otherwise, I got us tickets to Kings Island, the amusement park. I booked motel rooms for 2 nights, making sure we wouldn't be available for company. It was a big load off my mind. April was still trying, I could see that. We had another great time at the park. My girls loved it, and April couldn't have been more affectionate. Both girls were then in school, and April picked up a part-time job as an assistant in the school's office. That way, whenever there was no school, she would be there for the girls. My business was growing also. I hired 2 more employees. Life was good. The school was offering DNA tests to all students. That way, if there ever was a problem, the parents wouldn't have to go through finding donors. A worst-case scenario which no one wanted to talk about was, if a child came up missing, they could be identified. We had both Carly and Danny tested. We had to pick up the results 3 weeks later at the doctor's office. April had to work at the school that day and asked if I could slip by the doctor's and pick up the results. I had no problem with that. After I entered the office, the doctor gave me their results. He told me he was surprised that the girls looked so much alike, seeing they were only half-sisters. My mind went blank. The doctor asked me if I was all right, and I asked him what he meant about half-sisters. He said, "Oh, my goodness, I'm so sorry, I shouldn't have said anything. I didn't know." "Know what, Doc? Are you saying they had 2 different fathers?" Oh my goodness, I couldn't believe this was happening to me. "I'm sorry, David, I shouldn't have said anything. The tests show that one of the parents is different in each test." "Doc, can you give me a test? I need to know for sure. I'm pretty sure, but I need the test results." The doctor reluctantly took my blood. He said he would put a rush on it and try and get my results in a week. He again apologized to me and said that he was sorry. I looked him right in the eyes and said, "Doc, I am not the biological father of one of my girls. I'll tell you right now that they are both still my daughters and I will love them equally. I am the only father they know, and if I hear you have told anyone about this conversation, we will be going in circles." Dave, my lips are sealed. I went home with the results. April looked at them, but they didn't mean anything to her. Just a bunch of dots on a chart, unless you really knew how to read them. After she looked at them, I was almost positive that she didn't know one of our daughters was not mine biologically. I went back and got my results a week later. I was right. My little pride and joy Danny was not my biological daughter. I knew it had to have been the affair she had with Brad. Oh my goodness, I hated what she did to me. Hopefully no one would ever know. I wasn't even going to tell April. For the next couple of weeks, I was depressed. April asked me what was wrong and I told her I wasn't feeling good. She told me maybe I should go see a doctor. I told her that I medicated up and that should do it. Actually, I just drank nearly a pint of whiskey and went to bed. I woke up the next morning and there was little Danny laying on my arm. I didn't care whose sperm it was. She was my little girl. Time went by and I was somewhat back to normal. Life around me really hadn't changed and little Danny was still my little sweetheart. April was still as loving and nice as ever. Beth called one day and talked to April. After they got off the phone, April said that Beth and her husband Mark were breaking up. They were getting divorced after 10 years of marriage. She said it was for irreconcilable differences. She said Beth didn't say any more than that. Life went on. April and her secret, and me and my 2 secrets. It was time for the 15-year reunion. Carly was then 13 and Danny was going on 10. April said Beth wanted her to go to the reunion since she was on the committee with Beth that year. It would be hard not to go if you had planned it. I really didn't want to go, but I sure as heck wasn't going to let April go alone. We headed for the reunion. The classmates looked older. A lot of them we hadn't seen in 10 years since we missed the last one. Brad, of course, showed up, again without his wife. He held his hand out for me to shake and I told him, "Brad, I'm tired of pretending. I don't like you and never have. I'm not going to shake your hand, and I don't expect you to be spending the whole reunion with my wife." April looked at me and said, "David, how could you speak so poorly to Brad?" Oh my goodness, I'm embarrassed. She looked at Brad and started to apologize for me, so I just waved my hand in disgust and walked away. She came up to me later and started arguing with me. "How could you do that, David? Brad hasn't done anything to deserve this. He's always treated you with respect." I almost broke out and told the truth about everything but ended up saying, "All he wants is to hang around you all night and we both know it. If you want him so gosh darn bad, there he is. Go get him." April ran to the ladies' room crying. Beth overheard part of the conversation and ran after her. Maybe I said too much. I guess I had had enough. I walked over to the bar and started drinking. Before long, April came back and said she was going to see a few of the classmates. I watched her and she did stay away from Brad. I think she danced with him one time the whole night. I pretty much sat at the bar by myself. Every once in a while someone came over and I talked to them. When the reunion ended, April had to help me to the car. She told me how much I embarrassed her and then gave me the silent treatment. When we got home, I went straight to bed. The alarm went off and I felt terrible. It was Sunday, but I promised a couple of people I would have their cars fixed. I got up and headed off to work. As I was working, I was feeling bad about the way I acted at the reunion. Granted, I hated Brad and was mad at April, but neither one knew why. I called a couple of guys in to work. It would cost me some extra bucks since it was Sunday, but I was going to go home and take my family out to dinner. When I arrived home, the house was empty. It was 1 p.m. The answering machine was flashing as I rewound it. Again, April must not have answered it on time and I heard the message. "Hello," said April. "Hey girl, what are you up to?" It was Beth. "Hi Beth, just got out of the shower when I heard the phone ringing." "What's up?" "Lunch. Want to come to lunch with a group of classmates?" "Who all is going, Beth?" "Besides you and me, about half the class. Can you make it?" "Is Brad going, Beth?" "David would kill me if I went to lunch with Brad." "For goodness sake, April. It's lunch with old classmates, not a party with one old boyfriend. Besides, you hardly even talked to Brad last night, and it's only lunch." After the way David embarrassed me last night, it would serve him right. "What time and where, Beth?" "Holiday Inn at noon." Okay, but I have to get home before David gets off work. He should be home by 5 or earlier. That was it. She was doing it again. I went downstairs and got the baggie from 10 years before. I shrink-wrapped it to make sure no air would get into it. I then started packing my things. I was going to move out and stay in the apartment above the garage. I had most of my personal stuff in my truck and 2 suitcases by the door waiting for April. At 4 o'clock, she came in the door. She was dressed in a full-cut mini dress with a low-cut neckline. Jewelry and all, she looked dressed to kill. "David, what are you doing home? I thought you worked till 5 o'clock. I felt bad about the way I treated you yesterday and thought I would make it up to you and take you out for dinner. Looks like you already ate. David, I have something to tell you. Before you say anything, I have something for you to hear." I played back the recorded message. "Oh my goodness, David, we didn't do anything. We just had lunch. I wouldn't do anything to hurt you. You have to believe me." She was crying. "Let me tell you something, April, and then see if you can say the same thing. I have never spent time or had any kind of involvement with another person since we got married. Can you say that, April?" "David, honest, we only ate lunch. There were about 30 people from class. Ask anybody. Brad wanted to do something, but I wouldn't let him. I told him no, and if he tried again, I would tell you. Then I slapped him, David. You got to believe me, David. Absolutely nothing happened, honest." "Then let me hear you say what I said, or would you be lying?" "Okay, David. Honest, I never had any romantic involvement with anyone since we've been married. Now, will you let me explain what happened so can we get over this and make up?" "Not yet. I have another tape for you to hear." I pulled out the tape, and she saw the pink clothes and screamed out. "Oh my goodness, David, no. It was a mistake. I didn't mean for it to happen. I love you, only you," as she listened to her conversation with Beth 10 years before. "One more thing you should know. I'm not Danny's biological father. Your lover, Brad, is. But as far as I'm concerned, she's my baby and I won't let that guy take her from me." I placed on the table Danny and my DNA papers. Also, a paper that read, "No matches found." April was screaming, "No, it can't be happening. It can't be true. Please, David, please don't leave me. I love you, David. I love only you." As I walked out the door with my last 2 suitcases, I could hear her crying. Chapter 2. April's story, where do I begin? I'll try to explain what happened without retelling everything again. There are a few parts I'll have to mention more than once so you understand the whole story. As David said, we all went to the same high school. At that time, Brad was my boyfriend. We probably dated for about 2 years. That's when I started dating David. I always had a crush on him, but I never acted on it because I was in a relationship with Brad. David thought I was dating him to make Brad jealous. And although there was a hint of truth to it, I also genuinely liked David. He was smart, good-looking, in great shape, and incredibly handy. We even nicknamed him McDave after the TV character MacGyver. We started dating, and after about 6 months, while we were both in higher education classes, we became more close. He was so caring and gentle. We were at his apartment, and he treated me with so much tenderness. We took our time, making sure I was comfortable and consenting every step of the way. It was a beautiful experience. We used protection, and luckily, there were no surprises. After that, we continued to be together many times. After we both finished our education, we got married. I introduced David to my parents, and they approved, despite their preference for Brad's career ambitions. I assured them that I loved David and wanted to spend my life with him. We soon became pregnant, and our first beautiful baby girl, Carly, was born. Everyone thought she looked like me, but I believe that babies can resemble anyone. Sometimes she looked like me, other times like David. It didn't matter because she was adorable, and we were blissfully happy. Then came that terrible day. We attended our 5-year class reunion. We were having a great time, but I may have been a bit too flirtatious. I danced with Brad a few times to make him see what he had lost when he chose Mary Lou, who eventually became a nun. The next day, some classmates met up for lunch before heading home. David couldn't join us because he had work to finish at the shop. I went alone and made the biggest mistake of my life. After lunch, I went to Brad's hotel room, and he started making unwelcome advances. Despite repeatedly saying no, I eventually gave in to his pressure. Looking back, I think I was comparing him to David, which was completely unfair to my husband. It was a thoughtless mistake, and I felt nothing but shame afterwards. We got dressed, and I quickly left, driving home in tears. I knew I needed to wash away the feelings of guilt and betrayal. However, no amount of scrubbing could cleanse the act of infidelity. Once you make that choice, it haunts you forever. I called my friend Beth, needing to confide in someone. Beth was my closest friend, and I trusted her to keep my secret. Unfortunately, she wasn't available at the time, so I left her a message. I was still in the shower, trying to wash away my sins, when the phone rang. I rushed to answer it, but before I could, the answering machine picked up. It was Beth. I called her back, and I poured my heart out, confessing what I had done and how it could ruin my marriage. Beth advised me not to tell David, explaining that it would only hurt him and potentially end our good relationship. She reminded me that I made a terrible mistake and that I needed to make it up to David by loving him and our daughter. I knew she was right. I had been foolish, and I needed to repent by being the best wife and mother I could be. That's the decision I made. Little did I know that David had discovered the evidence on the answering machine. He found the tape, and the missing pair of pink clothes that I hadn't even noticed was gone. Almost 9 months later, we welcomed our second child, a baby girl named Danny, named after David's middle name, Daniel. People said she resembled both of us, but I personally believed she looked a lot like her older sister, Carly. As they grew up, it was clear they were sisters, regardless of their individual features. We were still a happy family, and life seemed to get back to normal. We engaged in a DNA testing program at the school. The results were sent to our family doctor. I asked David to pick up Carly's and Danny's results from the doctor's office. He brought them home, but the results were just a bunch of dots and dashes that made no sense to me. We stored them in our safe just in case we needed them in the future. In hindsight, I remember David seemed a little agitated during that time. I thought he was getting sick because he started resting more and drinking a lot for a few days. He even slept on the couch, claiming he didn't want me to catch any potential illness. Now, looking back, it all seems peculiar. I failed to notice any significant changes in David's behavior. Every morning, I would find Danny cuddling with him. She had a habit of waking up in the middle of the night and always ended up snuggling next to her daddy. Their bond was incredible. Life carried on, and we continued creating beautiful memories with our kids. David was an amazing father and husband. We attended every school event for both Carly and Danny. Once, during Danny's career day at school, she asked David to speak to her class about being an auto mechanic. David chuckled but agreed to do it. Danny proudly told her classmates how much she admired her daddy and how she wanted to be an auto mechanic like him when she grew up. David couldn't have been prouder. Beth was in charge of planning our 15-year class reunion and asked me to help. David wasn't enthusiastic about attending, and he made sure I knew it. I had to be there due to my committee duties, but I had no intentions of reconnecting with Brad. I didn't feel any lingering affection for him. I dressed up for the reunion, as I always liked to look nice. I wanted to make David proud. I was polite to everyone, but I made sure not to flirt. I knew David wasn't comfortable with that. When we arrived at the reunion, Brad approached us immediately. I couldn't believe what David said to him. He firmly expressed his dislike for Brad and made it clear that he didn't want him spending the whole event with me. I was taken aback and embarrassed. I tried to apologize to Brad, but David walked away in annoyance. Later, I approached David to argue about his behavior. I couldn't understand how he could be so harsh towards Brad, who hadn't done anything wrong. I wanted to smooth things over, but David seemed to think I still had feelings for Brad, which was completely false. David had a bit too much to drink, so we decided to leave the reunion early. I drove him home, and the next morning he left for the shop before I even got out of bed. Our daughters were staying with my mom for the night. I was taking a shower when the phone rang. It caught me off guard, so I quickly jumped out to answer it. As I reached for the phone, I had to wait for the answering machine to stop recording. It was Beth, asking if I would attend a class luncheon. Apparently, about half the class had decided to go. I decided to go and reconnect with some classmates I hadn't had the chance to talk to due to David's behavior, which caused us to leave early the previous night. I figured Brad might be there, but I promised myself I would distance myself from him. When I arrived at the Holiday Inn, where we had a reserved dining room, I saw Brad and tried my best to avoid him. I said hello when he came over, but I kept my distance. Something about him made me uncomfortable. At one point, I needed to use the restroom, which was just around the corner. When I stepped out, Brad was there, blocking my path. He grabbed my arms and attempted to hug me. He threatened to tell David about what happened at the 5-year reunion if I didn't cooperate. In a moment of panic, I struck him in the head with all my force and then kneed him where it hurt. I quickly ran back to my seat, passing by Beth and Sister Mary Lou, who witnessed the altercation. I tried to remain calm, but my hands were shaking slightly. I sat down among friends and was feeling much better. Brad never returned to the table. He must have gone up to his room and then home. I really have no idea. Beth came back to the table and asked me quietly if I was all right. I told her I was, and I was going to tell David what Brad did today. I wasn't planning on saying anything about the 5-year reunion, just what happened today. I had our van and Beth asked if I would mind driving about 5 of the class members to the airport. There were 3 gals and 2 guys. One of the couples was married. It was a nice drive to the airport. We dropped the classmates off and then I dropped off Beth and headed home. When I walked into the house, there stood David. He said he came home early and was going to take me out to dinner to make up for being such an idiot at the reunion the night before. I told him I had something to tell him. I was about to tell him what Brad did when he played the tape message on the stupid answering machine. I told him I didn't do anything, but he didn't believe me. He didn't give me a chance to explain when he said he had another message for me to hear. I don't know where it came from, but he played the conversation that I had with Beth of that stupid mistake the day after our 5th reunion. I was listening to myself saying I messed up with Brad, and then David threw my pink clothes on the table. I broke down and started crying. I had no idea he even knew. He asked me before playing the tape if I ever had any involvement with anyone since we had been married. I told him no, not knowing he had this tape. He then hit me with the worst news of my life. Our baby, our Danny, was not his biological daughter. He had taken a DNA printout and set it next to Danny's along with a paper that said no match. I wanted to die. I never knew. He walked out the door and I sat there and cried my eyes out. I cried for me and I cried for David. He was the perfect husband and father and held this secret in for 10 years. And finding out several years after she was born that he was not the biological father for Danny had to be heartbreaking. He was her father, and no one could take that away. He was there for her from day one when he was there for the delivery, and was there when he dropped the girls off at my mom's yesterday. I wanted to die. I wanted God to come down right then and just take me. I was probably going to face the consequences of my past actions anyway. I lost the man I loved, and now I had to go pick up his children and tell them their dad left me. Oh God, help me. Chapter 3. What happens next? I should have known years ago that it would eventually come to this. I kept her affair to myself for 10 years and Danny's biological father a secret for at least 4. Maybe I should have done something 10 years ago and ended it then. The last 10 years have been the best and worst of my life. Both of us holding on to the same secret. That's crazy. Since I knew and stayed with her anyway. But why didn't I just come out and tell her I knew? At least I wouldn't be waiting around to see if she was going to cheat again. Waiting to bring up the old tape. Why? Why after 10 years did she go back and see the jerk again? My head was spinning and I had questions for her and questions for myself. But no answers. Danny, my little Danny, Daddy's little girl, I wanted to make sure she never found out. She's my daughter and I needed to protect her. I had to make sure that April never tells her. I didn't want anyone to know differently. I do believe that April never knew. She was shocked when I told her about Danny's DNA and mine. Monday after school, I got a call at the garage. It was Danny. Daddy, when are you coming home? I miss you. Mommy keeps crying and Carly is just sitting in her room. Come home please, Daddy. Sweetheart, Daddy can't come home now. Mommy and I have some problems. I'll tell you what though, I'll pick you and Carly up and we can go out for pizza or something. Can Mommy come? Not this time, sweetheart, maybe next time. Go ask Carly if she wants to go. Dad, Carly wants to go, but says she has to take care of Mommy. She won't stop crying. Can me and you go to McDonald's and I can bring back Carly and Mommy something? Darn, what great kids always worried about everyone else. Yes, sweetheart, we can do that. It's up to you to find out what they want. I'll be there in about 20 minutes to pick you up. Okay, Daddy, I love you. I heard a voice in the background. Daddy, Mommy said to say, we all love you, see you in a little bit, bye. Darn it. I just don't know what else to say. Darn it, darn it, darn it. I hate her and I love her. Why can't I even think straight? I went and talked to the guys about closing up the garage when they were done. I had some really good guys working for me. They knew their stuff when it came to cars and I did pay them well for it. I had their respect and they had mine. I told them that April and I were having some problems in case I jumped them for no reason. I was apologizing in advance. Danny jumped in the truck and gave me a big hug. She hugged me 2 more times. She said one was from Carly and the other from Mommy. With tears in my eyes, I drove to McDonald's. I let Danny know I was staying at the garage and she and Carly could call me anytime. Even though I wasn't at home, I would still be available to them at any time. I told her to tell her mom that I needed to tell her about a few things and I would call her tomorrow after school. The next day when I called, Carly answered the phone and said her mom was in the bathroom and would be right out. Then she asked, "Dad, what happened that was so bad that you moved out? Did Mom or me or Danny do something? I know I'm only 12, Dad, but I'm pretty smart. I know you wouldn't just walk out on us. What happened, Dad? What did we do? Honey, you and Danny didn't do anything wrong." I couldn't be more proud of the 2 of you. What did Mom do, Dad? I know she loves you. Dad, she's crying every night. I'm a little scared she might do something stupid. I know Mom, Dad. If she did something wrong, she would do anything to make it right. That's the kind of person she is. Give her a chance, Dad. I don't know what she did that was bad enough for you to leave. She won't tell us anything. Honey, this is between your mom and me. There is nothing you can do. Your mom and I have some major differences to talk about. I'm glad you are at least there for her. Dad, Danny and I are here for you too. We're a family, Dad, a good family. You need to know that. I love you, Dad. I was crying and trying not to show it. God, I loved my girls. April got on the phone. Hi, David. April, we need to talk. I'm worried about Danny. I don't ever want her to know that I am not her father. You are her father. You were always there for her. That's what real fathers do. Dave, I never knew, honestly, I never knew. I guess in a sense it's good I never knew. I can't talk about this over the phone, David. I need to see you, to tell you what happened. April, how do you expect me to believe anything you say to me? You've been lying to me for at least 10 years. As far as I know, everything you've ever said to me is a lie. I don't know what to believe anymore. Dave, please meet me and let me tell you everything I know. If you want to believe it's all a lie, so be it, but give me a chance to tell you. If not for our sake, then do it for Carly and Danny. All I'm asking is for you to hear me out before ending our marriage, our family. She was crying, then I could hear it through the phone. Okay, April, I'll listen to what you have to say. I don't know whether to believe anything, but I will give you a chance to say it. Thank you, David, that's all I ask. I promise you I will answer any questions you have. Even if you don't believe me, at least I will know that I have been honest with you. I went about my garage business the rest of the week. I talked to the girls every day, and they told me what they were doing at school. Carly said Mom seemed a little better since she talked to me. My little girl thanked me for talking to her mother. I wasn't looking forward to talking and listening to April. I wouldn't know whether to even believe her, and I had to figure out in my own mind why I didn't walk out 10 years before. The best reason I could come up with was that she was really sorry, at least she sounded like it on the tape, and she was going to do everything to make it up to me. I do have to say she lived up to that promise until this last reunion lunch. I really needed to know why she went and what she did there. Did she go to see Brad or not? Darn, I needed answers. That's why I want to hear what she was going to say. I showed up at the house around noon on Saturday. My 2 girls came running out to see me. Daddy's here, cried Danny. She jumped into my arms and of course expected me to catch her. No problem, I would never let my little one hit the ground, and she trusted me to make sure of it. Carly came running out and hugged me. Carly said that her mom was making lunch. I asked her what they were having, and she smiled and said since I was coming over, Mom wanted to make sure we had a good meal since I probably haven't been eating right. BBQ steak, mashed potatoes and gravy, corn on the cob, and she said Mom even made homemade bread, and I helped too, said Danny. Yeah, you kept eating it while it was hot, replied Carly. My 2 daughters, always arguing but really loved one another. Okay, girls, let's go inside. I walked in, and there was April in the kitchen, dressed like a Stepford wife. For those who never heard of it, those were women who always dressed up for their husbands, usually in dresses with their hair looking perfect. That's exactly the way April looked. She had on a little apron, and the table was all set. Welcome home, David, she said. She was pulling out all the stops. I had to put a stop to some of it, even though I loved the way everything, including April, looked. I'm not home, I live above the garage. For now, that's my home. I came here today to talk to you, that's it. That should knock some of the wind out of her sails. Since lunch is ready, will you eat with us? April asked. I didn't answer but sat in my chair. I was about to take some food when Danny said, "Dad, we have to say grace." Then she proceeded, "God is great, God is good. Let us thank him for our food. And God, thank you for bringing Daddy home to eat with us. Amen." Darn it, it wasn't fair. It just wasn't. I was here to talk, and here I was eating a fantastic meal, and I knew my kids were being honest. I know April's part was a setup, but not the kids. They were glad that Daddy was there for dinner. Darn, that woman could cook. When we got done eating, I told the girls that I would take them over to Grandma's and that Mommy would pick them up later. "Dad, are you going to be here when we get back?" "No, honey, not now. I'm just here to talk to Mommy, and then I'll be going back to the garage." The girls looked dejected. I did thank them for helping their mom cook a wonderful meal and asked them if they wanted to go to the zoo the following Saturday. They both yelled, "Yeah, we want to go. Can Mommy come too?" Darn, forgot about what they might ask. I told them we'd see, and I talked to them during the week. All that time April just sat there, not saying a word. Then she spoke up and told me that she would clean up the mess while I took the kids to her mother's house. When I got back, she had everything cleaned up and the leftovers in containers for me to take with me. This was all a ploy for my benefit, wasn't it, April? I wanted her to know I could see through it. Heck, anyone could see through it, but I had to start the conversation somehow. Of course it was on my part, but not on the girls' part. They were just glad their dad was going to be here. Well, we better get started. I'll let you tell me everything you want to. I want all the questions that I need answered. Is that all right with you? Any way you want, David. I just want to tell you everything and let the cards fall where they may. How many times did you hug Brad? My goodness, David. You don't have to be so abrupt. I told you I would answer all your questions. Again, how many times did you hug Brad? Twice, once when we were going together and that silly time after the 5th reunion. You mean to tell me in your entire life you only hugged him twice? That's the truth, David. It was so awful the first time. I had no idea how good it could be until I hugged you. I would like to add that you and Brad are the only two guys I have ever hugged in my entire life. I now wish I never ever hugged Brad, even the first time. Shoot, that kind of threw me off a little. I hugged a lot of the girls from our class. Glad I don't have to tell her about them. Why did you do it the second time with him, April? I don't know, David. Don't expect me to cry a lot now. I'm all cried out. I honestly don't know. Maybe to compare you to him, maybe because it was so awful the first time I might have thought it was my fault. I don't know, David, I really don't know. I wish I did. I wish I could go back to that day and not do it. I can wish that it never happened, but it did, David, it did, and I have to live with it the rest of my life. Her eyes were tearing up. Why didn't you tell me? You would have left me, David. I know you would have. I don't know why you didn't when you found out. David, after that happened, I came home and spent an hour in the shower trying to wash the cheating away. I hated what I did to you, but all I could think about was if I told you, you would have left me and Carly. I decided to live with the pain and be the best wife I could. I really wanted to tell you. Gosh, it was so hard keeping it from you, but I knew you would be hurt if you found out, and we would be headed for a divorce. I loved you too much to lose you, David. I still love you too much to lose you. She started crying again. What about Danny? When did you know I wasn't her biological father? 2 weeks ago, when you told me. I was devastated. I didn't know what to think. You and me making a child together felt so right. Then you showed me the DNA. I didn't know what to think. If I knew that I was pregnant by Brad, I would have had an abortion. I really would have. I want your babies, but not anyone else's. I keep wondering since you told me that if I would have known it was Brad's child and I would have gotten an abortion, then there wouldn't have been any Danny. You see, I'm really torn apart about it too. David, as I said before, Danny is your daughter and no one else's. She is going to go through her entire life knowing that. I won't see her hurt. You're her daddy, her only daddy. I thought she was cried out, but apparently not. Let's get to the lunch where you intended to cheat on me again. Oh my goodness, no, David, that's not true. It, absolutely without question, is not true. I was only going to lunch with over half the class there. April, I brought the tape with me. Let's listen to it together. I played the tape again. Hello, said April. Hey girl, what are you up to? It was Beth. Hi, Beth. Just got out of the shower when I heard the phone ringing. What's up? Lunch. Want to come to lunch with a group of classmates. Who all is going, Beth? Besides you and me, about half the class. Can you make it? Is Brad going, Beth? David would be mad if I went to lunch with Brad. For goodness sake, April. It's lunch with old classmates, not spending time with one old boyfriend. Besides, you hardly even talked to Brad last night, and it's only lunch. After the way David embarrassed me last night, it would serve him right. What time and where, Beth? Holiday Inn at noon. Okay, but I have to get home before David gets off work. He should be home by 5 or earlier. Well, there it was. You said, after the way David embarrassed me last night, it would serve him right. What did you mean by that, April? Going to lunch with friends would serve me right, or having lunch with Brad would serve me right? Did you hug him too, or were you planning on it? No. David, you took the meaning all wrong. I did mean that if I had lunch with Brad, you would get mad. I can't deny that. The rest was just a statement people make. I had no intention of being with Brad. None whatsoever. In fact, he gave me the creeps. I tried to stay as far away from him as I could. Ask Beth, ask anyone. I tried to stay away from him, David. See, April, I can't believe you. Maybe you are telling the truth, maybe you're lying. I can't believe Beth. She's your best friend. She would lie for you if you asked her to. You keep saying you tried to stay away from him. Are you saying you weren't able to? Wow, April, that's what I've been trying to tell you. I went to the ladies' room, and when I came out, Brad was standing there. He wouldn't let me pass him, and he grabbed me by the arms and said, "Give me a hug, or I'll tell your husband about the 5-year reunion lunch." So you hugged him. Is that what you're going to tell me? No, never, April. I hit him with my fist alongside of his head and then kneed him really hard. He fell to the ground and I ran back to the luncheon. Beth and Mary Louisiana came around the corner. I'm not positive how much they saw. Ask Beth. She'll tell you. Again, David, can I believe Beth, your best friend? Why were you so late coming home? Your lunch surely didn't last almost 4 hours. When I came back to the table, I was breathing hard, and Beth asked me if I was all right. She asked me if I wanted to drive some of the classmates to the airport, and she would ride with me. Was Brad one of the people you took to the airport? No. After I kneed him, he never returned to the luncheon. Besides, I think he drove to the reunion. According to Margaret, one of the classmates, he likes to show off his car. What kind of car does he have, April? I have no idea, David. I never saw it and never wanted to. You were dressed really nice when you came back. Why? David, I always dress nice, especially for you. You know that. But I wasn't there. Did you dress for someone else? Brad, for example? No, David. I know you're not going to believe this, but I did dress for you. I always dress for you. When someone sees me, I want them to know that I'm your girl. I know that's hard for you to understand 'cause you're a guy, but it is the truth. I didn't reply. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. I asked her if there is anything else she wanted to tell me before I left. Well, David, 10 years ago I made a nearly tragic mistake. I say nearly because Danny came out of it and I wouldn't want to lose her for the world. Other than that, I wish it could all be forgotten and disappear from both mine and your memory. I love you with all my heart and soul. I always will, no matter what happens now. I was stupid 10 years ago, but I did nothing wrong since then, including the luncheon. For some reason, you thought to forgive me 10 years ago. I don't know why, but nothing has changed since then. If you could have forgiven me then, why can't you love me now? I have grown to love you even more, and I know you love Carly and Danny. I love you, David, and want you home with our family. She started crying again. I told her I had to think and would talk to her again. I told her to hug the girls for me and went to my truck and back to my apartment above the garage. Chapter 4, the conclusion. I went home and kept listening to the tapes over and over. I had no proof whether she was telling the truth or not. I just didn't know. A couple of days later, Beth showed up and said she wanted to speak with me. I went into the office to listen to her. She began by telling me she knew about the affair after the 5th reunion. She had talked to April, and April said that I knew about it. She told me it was her suggestion for April not to tell me about it. It happened and was over and done. There was nothing to gain by telling me. She told me the only reason April kept it from me was she didn't want to hurt me and that she was afraid that I would divorce her. I explained to Beth that I pretty much understood what happened after the 5th reunion. I was interested in knowing what happened at the 15th luncheon. Before she started, I told her I had to take whatever she said with a grain of salt because she was such a close friend to April. Well, I called April and asked her about the luncheon since she was on the committee. She did ask me if Brad was going to be there. I told her he was and she thought about not coming. I made some silly remark about not being friends with anybody. That it was just a luncheon. She said something about you deserving it. I think it was her way of saying she was mad at you for the previous night. I truly believe she didn't mean anything by it. I can see where the statement by itself could be misconstrued. Beth, where did she sit and did she talk to Brad? I need the truth, Beth. Lying for her won't help any of us. She sat as far away from Brad as possible. One time Brad did walk up to her and she did say hello to him, but that was it. He returned to his seat. He confronted her later. I don't know what was said, but I can tell you what I saw. April came out of the restroom and I saw Brad grab her by the arm and she hauled off and caught him a good one alongside the head. Then she raised her knee and got him right in the groin. He fell down and she went back to her seat. Then what happened, Beth? April was a little shaken up, so I calmed her down and we decided to drive a few people to the airport. It was a nice ride and seemed to calm April down. David, it's none of my business, but I can understand where you have been hurting all these years, but so has April. She is my best friend, you're right. The reason I'm here right now is because she loves you and you love her. You have two wonderful children together. Don't throw it all away now. She didn't do anything but eat lunch. Believe me, she had no intention of hurting you. Thanks for stopping by, Beth. You're a good friend to April. Beth left and I went over what she said. It was pretty much what April said. I turned around and Beth had come back in. David, there is something very important I forgot to tell you. It might help you believe me. What is it, Beth? The reason Brad never came back to the table was he was taken to the hospital. It seems as though he fell and hit his face, and it was turning black and blue according to the hospital report. Also, for some reason, one of his testicles got injured. Beverly didn't come to the luncheon. She's a nurse at the hospital and called me the other day. Would you believe I forgot to tell April? Would you tell her for me? I just found out yesterday. Brad was going to try and sue the restaurant, but when they found out about the injury, he decided not to sue. Thanks, Beth. That was good news, no matter what I decided to do. I will tell April. Wow, maybe there is a little truth going on here. If there was only someone I could believe who wasn't our friends. The next day, Mary, or should I say Sister Mary Louisiana, came in to get the oil changed on her convent car. While my guys were changing the oil, Sister Mary said, "You want to talk to me, don't you?" As a matter of fact, I do. Did you go to the luncheon a couple of weeks ago? David, quit beating around the bush. I may be a nun, but I've known you my whole life. I know you quite well and have to say that you were one of very few guys that I ever respected. In my wild days, you still treated me nice. You were always courteous and well-mannered. I respect you for that, and someday I'll put a good word in for you. She smiled. She smiled. Yes, David, I was at the luncheon, and yes, I could see Brad trying to hit on April. Over at the restroom door, I saw Brad grab April. I was going to go try to stop it, but April didn't need any help. She hauled off and slugged Brad alongside the head and then kneed him somewhere quite sensitive, so to speak. He fell and April left. I called a waiter that was nearby and they attended to Brad. That's everything I saw. I don't know what this is all about, but you and April are two special people and deserve to be together. David, take a word from a wise nun and a friend. If you and April are having marital problems, you need to ask yourself only one question. Would my life be better without this person in my life? That's the only question you need to ask yourself. We can't let things like pride and not forgiving others for their mistakes take over our lives. Just ask yourself, would I be a happier person without April in my life? And act accordingly. I hope in some small way I helped you. God bless you and April, Dave. I thanked Sister Mary as she got in her car and drove away. She was one opinion I knew I could trust. She never knew what it was all about, and I was sure she wasn't going to lie for April. I would have to call April tomorrow and have another talk with her. Before I had a chance to call, the phone rang. It was Danny. Hi, Daddy. I was supposed to call you and ask if Mommy can go to the zoo with us, remember? Yes, sweetheart, I remember, and yes, Mommy can go with us. I heard her yelling for Carly to tell April she gets to go to the zoo too. What a family. Danny, is Mom there? I need to speak to her. She yelled into the phone, Mom, Daddy wants to talk to you. Here she is, Daddy. See you Saturday. Hi, David, this is a nice surprise. I get to go to the zoo with you. I could tell she was smiling. You could almost feel it through the phone. That's not why I was going to call, but you are welcome to go to the zoo. I was going to call you to let you know Beth called me, and said the reason Brad didn't go back to his table was that he got hurt and his face was swelling up. The restaurant people took him over to the emergency room. Unfortunately, he'll live. David, those were two of the moves you taught me when we first started dating. You said if any guy approached me from the front to use my knee and try to hit him alongside his ear. Guess I missed but got his temple. I have you to thank for the training. April, after we get back from the zoo Saturday, we need to talk again. If it's all right with you, anything that will help bring you back to me, I'll do, David. Anything. We all want you and need you here with us, David. Well, we'll talk again Saturday. Don't go making a dinner. We'll eat out after we see some animals. See you Saturday. Thank you, David. I love you. And she hung up. Saturday, we had a nice time. I slipped up a couple of times and held April's hand. Of course, she didn't say anything. We had fun feeding the animals and spending time together. It's only been 3 weeks, but felt much longer. The kids couldn't have been happier. Zoo, I told the girls they could pick out the place we could eat. I was waiting for McDonald's or Chuck E. Cheese when the girls yelled out together. Red Lobster. I looked over at April, knowing that was one of her favorites, and asked her if she bribed the kids. She said, I told you I would never lie to you. Yes, I bribed them. With what? What did you bribe them with? She looked at me and said, I promised them that I would try to convince their daddy to spend the night at home tonight. I didn't reply to her answer. I asked everyone what they wanted to eat. After we ate, we headed to the house. It was getting late, and we sent the kids to bed. Then April and I went into the living room and sat down to talk. What is it, David? What's the problem? What can I do to make it right? April, AG. I do believe you told me the truth about the luncheon. Sister Mary Louisiana came by and told me she saw Brad grab you and how you retaliated. She didn't have any reason to lie. My problem is that I never did anything about it 10 years ago. I feel I should have told you or yelled at you, maybe even divorced you, but I did nothing. I accepted your betrayal and did nothing. I'm having a hard time dealing with it. I don't understand, David. You want revenge against me? You want to have an affair? David, no one knows except you, me, Beth, and Brad. I never told anyone else. I was too ashamed. Is that it, David? You want to get even with me by having an affair? I wish it were that easy. I love you, April, I really do. I always have. I don't want an affair. You're all I need. You see, Sister Mary Louisiana stopped by to see me and told me she saw you fighting off Brad. Then she told me how to solve my problem. What did she say, David? She said to ask myself one question: would I be a happier person without April in my life? And act accordingly. What is your answer, David? She was waiting with tears in her eyes again. I want you, Carly, and Danny in my life on a daily basis. Oh God, David, I love you so much, and I let her hug me. I do have my problems still, April. If I don't get revenge on you, I will have to take it out on Brad. David, Brad lives in New York. What can you do? Wait till the next reunion. We then went into the bedroom and spent time together. Time flew by, and it was time for the 20-year reunion. Beth was on the committee again, but April told her we would both attend, but she wasn't going to be on the committee. I called Beth, who was still April's best friend, and asked her if Brad sent back his invitation. She said he had, and it was only for one person. A little side note, but not of importance, Beth did get remarried to a really nice realtor by the name of Mike. We attended their wedding, and even though Beth is a good-looking woman, my April was still the best-looking woman there. I did find out a few things about Brad, and of course I told April. Brad was a lawyer, but he wasn't the best. He got ahead by marrying the daughter of the firm's president. She was his secretary, but she was the one who controlled the strings. That is the reason she never came to the reunions. She wasn't going to come down from New York to our little town for Brad's reunion. Brad, on the other hand, thought he was still the big man on campus. We got to the reunion early. April looked fantastic. She said she dressed for me, and this time I believed her. We were acting like two newlyweds. All our friends were coming up to us, and then I saw Brad standing by the bar. He was balding some and must have gained 30 pounds in the last 5 years. He was telling one of his old friends about his new car with the leather interior. I started toward him, and April was scared and came along with me. His friend walked away when he saw I didn't look too happy. I approached Brad and said, "My wife said there was something you wanted to tell me at the last reunion." "What is it?" Brad looked nervous. I don't remember, sorry. "Well, I got something to say to you, you big jerk. You lay a finger on my wife and I'll make sure you regret it. Do I make myself clear, you overrated piece of trash?" "Yes, I hear you." He quickly turned around and walked away. This time April leaned over and hugged me and said, "I love you, David." On Monday, I told her she had to make a phone call. I bought a disposable phone so the number couldn't be traced to us. A disposable phone is a small phone which you can purchase with just so many minutes on it. We could get rid of it when we were through with our calls. I had her call Brad's office. I figured he probably wouldn't show up his first day back after the embarrassment he was put through. He would want a day to clean up and put himself in order. Of course, I wanted his wife/secretary to answer the phone. April looked at me and smiled and said, "Oh, David, you're sly." I told April what I wanted her to say, and she shook her head and said, "Honey, I never want you mad at me ever again." She called Brad's office and got the receptionist. She asked to speak to Brad but was told he wasn't in, so she asked if she could speak with his assistant. When the assistant wife answered the phone, April told her that she left a personal item in Brad's car and asked if he could mail it to her. His assistant asked what it was, and April said it was something private. The assistant told her that it was all right, she would keep it confidential. My special gift. I left my special gift in the back seat of his car. I wouldn't have called except it was a present from him, and I would like to keep it. You could feel the anger of the assistant over the phone, but we could tell she wanted all the information she could get. She asked, "Who is this and how do you know Brad?" April said, "I'm his old friend from high school and we've been reconnecting at the reunions. Could you please have him send it to me? It goes with my collection. He knows where I live. Oh, I'm sorry, please tell him that I was sorry to hear about his wife passing away. I'll pass on all the information, don't worry. What did you say your name was?" "Mary Lou. I promise you he'll remember me. Thank you again, and please give him my regards." Then April hung up. April looked at me and said, "David, I didn't feel right doing that. I know he deserved it. I want you to know that I did it for you. I promised you that I would do whatever you asked. Please don't ask me to do stuff like that again. April, I think you have proven your love to me. I promise I will never ask you to go against anything you feel is wrong. I think our revenge is final. The only thing is, if Danny would ever need a kidney, I would have to go to New York and operate on Brad myself. My family comes first." Epilogue. Life went on. We never spoke of Brad again. We attended the 25th reunion, and Brad was a no-show. Rumor had it was that he was divorced and lost his job. He started over with another company with fewer benefits. We heard through the grapevine that his wife found 2 pairs of undergarments in the back of her car. We heard that Brad denied everything and said he was set up so his wife had a DNA test done and the pink undergarments had evidence of him being unfaithful. That was enough for her to be convinced that he was cheating. We heard he had relationships with a couple of the other employees in his office. He used his position to get close to the women. He was being sued by 2 former employees. She never did mail us the undergarments back unless Sister Mary Louisiana got them. Carly became a teacher and now is married with a family of her own. Danny? Well, Danny is married to a race car driver. You see, she runs our garage and has brought in a ton of business. She ended up meeting a driver who said she is the best mechanic he has ever seen and definitely the most beautiful. He has a number of drivers coming to her for repairs. They have 2 children of their own. She always said she wanted to take after Dad. She told me some of the drivers called her McDanny. At our 30th reunion, the committee called April and I up to the stage. They gave us an award for being the happiest married couple of our class. They asked us what our secret was after so many years with so many divorces and separations in today's society. I looked at April and said, "Many years ago, a very close friend told me the secret between marriage and divorce." She said, "Just ask yourself if would you be a happier person without April in your life and act accordingly." My answer always comes out that I am much happier with April in my life. I looked out at the crowd and saw a smiling Sister Mary Louisiana and smiled back. Life is good.